Hi, guys. Hope you are well. I wanted to go over a story that's been in the news lately that a lot of people have asked me to comment on, and that's the protesting going on in the country of Colombia, where I spend a lot of my time when we're not in a global cerveza sickness. I spend probably 3 or 4 months a year in Colombia, or I have since 2015. So I know the country well, especially Medellin, Colombia. And so people have asked me my opinion on what's going on. And I think what's happening in Colombia is a fantastic lesson on so many levels. Here in the United States, a lot of people have pushed for further restrictions from the government, as an example. They want to lock people in their homes longer, and they want to lock people in their homes and enforce the restriction to a greater extent. And a lot of those attitudes are loosening now, but especially back in 2020, you heard a lot of that. You had very few people in the mainstream media, especially, that were saying that we should leave the decision up to the individual. We should allow businesses or people who own businesses to make their own decision as to whether or not they want to stay open, whether or not they want to try to conduct business. Instead, the government did not give us the choice. And I get it. It was all in the name of safety. But as we can see now from the data, it's pretty obvious that regardless of how strict the policy was, it really didn't do anything, because the data in states where the restrictions were far less draconian fared about the same as the other states where the restrictions were much more severe. So and sometimes it's that way, sometimes it's not. There's really no correlation in the data. So it's one of these things that you just kind of have to deal with, and it's not fun. It's suboptimal, obviously. It's unfortunate when we have a health issue like this, but locking people in their homes, we've seen have not made the health matter worse. But my point is, the people who advocate for those measures do so by claiming that this is going to be wildly beneficial for health. We all know that. We know the story. We know the pitch. But what they never do is a cost benefit analysis. So they always talk about perceived benefits, but they never talk about actual real life definitive costs. And I think you're seeing those costs actually play out right now in Colombia. So why is it more severe in Colombia as far as these protests than something that you'd see in the United States? Well, because we have the world reserve currency. So for a lot of different reasons, we can run up $5 trillion deficits, and we can spend that money into the economy. We can send people billions of dollars worth of stimulus checks, so their incomes actually go up, not down, even though the unemployment rate is extremely high. So even though people are producing less, they're getting paid more. It's just that payment is coming from the government as a result of, we'll call it quote unquote, money printing. Well, other countries can't do that, namely Colombia. And they don't have the world reserve currency. So if Colombia just prints up an extra $5 trillion, worth of Colombian pesos, you get Weimar Germany. I mean, maybe not to that extent, but you get some severe hyperinflation, which would be worse than the cerveza sickness itself. So the politicians have no good options, they have no choice. They don't have a get out of jail free card. They don't have this, what people perceive to be as a free lunch that we have here in the United States. Of course, we all know that at some point in time, you have to pay the fiddler, but they can't kick the can down the road like we can. So this is a fantastic lesson on cost benefit analysis, and we need to learn and program ourselves to never get into a mindset where we are omitting potential benefits or potential costs just to reinforce our belief system. And whether it's whether it's Austrian economics, whether it's free market capitalism, whether it's being a libertarian, or whatever you call yourself, whatever belief system you have, we never want to ignore certain data points just to reinforce that the beliefs, because it makes us feel good. Right? We always want to try to poke holes in our own theory, because at the end of the day, that's how we learn. And at the end of the day, that's how we sharpen our views and our ability to think critically and rationally. So let's go to this article from the BBC that talks about exactly what's happening in Colombia. And then once we understand it better, we can understand how important it is to go through that cost benefit analysis, exactly what we were just talking about. So let's get to the article here. So from the BBC, and yes, I used the BBC specifically because I know they lean left. And so they're going to, further the kind of the progressive agenda, the Klaus agenda, if you will, kind of the World Economic Forum, because I wanted, if anything, I wanted to err on the side of the debate, let's say, that I would initially disagree with. Because again, we don't want to get into that, we don't want to be victims of our own echo chamber, or the confirmation bias, I guess is another way of explaining it. So let's go through this here. A number of police stations have been attacked in Colombia, Bogota, as widespread protests run into the second week. And this is not fake news. I can tell you that, because I've had employees call me and text me from Colombia. As many of you know, I've got most of my employees are in Colombia. And this is the real deal. I mean, they're worried. Most of my employees are in areas where the protests aren't really bad, but they can't go to certain parts of town because it's just too volatile. So it talks about how 24 people have passed, including a police officer, unfortunately, in these protests. So let's get down to this part. Why are they protesting? The demonstration that started April 28th were initially in opposition to the tax reform. They always call tax increases tax reform. The government said was key to mitigating the country's economic crisis. So here, look at what happened. So you lock everyone in their house, and that reduces productivity. They can't go out and work. They lose their job. And you do this in the name of health. I get it, right? But in a country like Colombia, that can't just print up trillions of dollars of currency units and bail out every single business, or just send stimmy checks to people. You have to suffer the economic consequences of actually locking people in their house. And that means, and see, it's really hard for us to comprehend that as Americans, isn't it? That, well, why can't you just lock people in their house for 6 months? I mean, look at how easy we did it. No problem. Well, what's this? You lock people in their house for 6 months, and you just go back and everything's normal, right? We don't realize that the reason we're able to get away with that is because of the trillions and trillions of dollars that the government created out of nowhere just to send to people. That was obviously financed through the Fed monetizing the debt. But again, other countries cannot do that. That doesn't work. They have to abide by economic laws and principles. So if you are going to lock people in their homes, you're going to have to pay the fiddler. And the price is that you devastate the economy. People lose their jobs and they lose their livelihoods. So the rallies were organized by the biggest trade unions, but were also joined by many middle-class people who feared changes could see them slip into poverty. Almost half the country's population now lives in poverty, with inequalities exacerbated. Okay, this part of it's fake news, because whenever they say half, right, that's because you've got half the population that lives in the Amazon, for heaven's sake. So they live in the jungles of FARC. They take the entire country's population instead of taking the population of like Medellin or Bogota or Cali or Cartagena. You would not get half the people living in poverty there. It would be like half of the United States being the mountains of West Virginia, and saying that half the country's population now lives in poverty. Oh yeah, okay. In the woods of Alabama or Arkansas or something like that, sure, but not half the people live in poverty in Phoenix, Arizona, something like that. So anyway, I won't nitpick too much because I know that's not the point of this live stream. The proposal would have lowered the threshold at which salaries are taxed, affecting anyone with a monthly income of 2.6 million pesos or more. So to give you guys an idea of how much that is, they kind of say here, I pay, well, I'm not going to tell you what I pay. I pay more than this to some of my employees. So, I mean, listen, if you're making, yeah, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a month, you're going to get, your taxes are going up. But see, in Colombia, again, they don't have a choice. They don't have the printing press to the degree that we do in the United States. And this just goes to show you this exorbitant privilege that other economists and central bankers have pointed out that we, the American people, actually have. And, Americans like to assume that we are, quote unquote, richer just because we're better than everyone else. Well, we just work harder. Well, we're just superior in some way. We just do things better. Maybe in some ways, but what we don't understand is that we like to pat ourselves on the back quite a bit, but without that world reserve currency, our standard of living would be nowhere near what it is today, all things being equal. Okay, so basically the president had to, or not had to, is put forth this bill that increases taxes or makes people pay tax, even individuals that are making $684 a month. Now, another thing I want to make clear is that if you're making $700 a month in Colombia, it's not like making $700 a month in the US. Not even close. That would be like making maybe $3,000 a month, $4,000, something like that, as far as your purchasing power, because the prices of goods and services are so low there. So I've got to jump on a call here, guys. I'm sorry, but my main point with this video is to make people realize that what we've seen with the cerveza sickness is a case study on why it's so important to not only look at the costs, but also look at the benefits. Why it's so important not just to look at the benefits, but in this case, you've got to look at the costs. You see, this was a result of the government locking people in their houses for months, if not a year, and not letting them go out, not letting them work, not letting businesses open. Now, would someone argue that you could have saved some life? Well, sure. Okay, maybe. And I'm not saying you would have or you wouldn't have. That's not the point of this video. This video is to say, look at the devastation that was caused by those lockdowns. Look at this. Look at this. What is the perceived benefit? Well, I can tell you what the actual cost is, because right here, you're looking at a definitive cost. What is the benefit? Or what is the perceived benefit? You see? So that's what I want to encourage all of you to do, and I wanted to use this story as an example. Is you've got to look at everything as far as a cost-benefit analysis, especially those in the United States who are favoring even more lockdowns or more government-mandated restrictions. Just although you think it may offer some blanket of additional security, you got to remember that there's going to be a cost to that. And you've got to factor that into the equation. Because what we're seeing here in Colombia, we may not see it right now in the United States, but I can tell you, if we continue down this path of government intervention and central planning and exacerbating the wealth gap because we're not allowing people to go and work and produce goods and services and produce things, and we're trying to create wealth by just inflating asset bubbles that only benefit those who hold assets, this is exactly what you're going to get here. All right, guys, got to hop on a conference call. So I will talk to you guys in a bit. We'll save the shout outs for this evening. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you on the next video. And if you didn't watch my whiteboard video last night, what on earth are you doing? That thing is wildly popular. In fact, I just uploaded, I'm looking at my other YouTube channel. I uploaded it 16 hours ago, and it already has 50,000 views. It's on how gold could go to $50,000 an ounce, according to Luke Groman. So definitely check out that video if you haven't. Thanks for joining me, guys. We'll see you soon.